Good evening to you. Today we are going to continue our study in the book of Hebrews. We've been talking about the priesthood of Christ and in a great deal. And if you didn't watch the previous two videos, you probably would be helpful to do that. Now we are going to look at basically what we can enjoy about the priesthood of Christ and what our responsibility is. We've studied about what he done for us. He's now at the right hand of the throne of God through the blood, his own blood. And now we see, I would say, responsibility. In verse 19, we will start. Hebrews chapter 10, verse 19. It says, "Therefore, brethren, having boldness to enter the holiness by the blood of Christ, by a new and living way, which he consecrated for us, through the veil, that is, his flesh. And having a high priest over the house of God, we have." Now notice he said, having a high priest over the house of God. That's what we have. Now we're going to see responsibility. He doesn't use the word responsibility, but he used the word let us. Look at 22. "Let us draw near with a true heart, in full assurance of faith, having our hearts sprinkled from an evil conscience and our bodies washed with pure water." Basically, let us draw near with a true heart. We with full assurance, we can know we are saved. We can know we are children of God. We can know because we have a high priest. We have a high priest that spoke for us. So it says, let us draw near with a true heart. Now, what does that produce? The next sentence, the next verse, 23. It says, let us hold fast the confidence of our hope without wavering, for he who promised is faithful. Let us hold fast. Basically, hold fast because we can be faithful that what is going to happen. Hold fast. I can remember when I was a kid playing and couldn't swim when I was young, but my dad would take us out to Bear Creek on the Cimarron River there. And we would go out and walk through the sandbar, and so oftentimes we'd walk out there in water that was up to my daddy's shoulder, well over my head and my brother's. But he would hold his arms out, and he would have, there was 4 of us boys, he would have 2 on each arm. He only had 2 hands. He would take the younger ones in his hand. Then you know what he would tell us? Me and my brother next to me, he said, "Boys, hold fast." Hold fast. And as long as we hold fast, we trusted and knew Dad was going to take us to the safety. I think of that when I think about Jesus. We are to do what? We are to hold fast with confidence. I had confidence because I knew Dad loved me. I know Jesus loved me. And that's what we know and realize. This is how we are to hold fast to confidence. Because not only that, but verse 24, we are to hold fast. We are to do something else. Verse 24, let us consider one another in order to stir up for love and good works. We was on that sandbar in deep water on one side of it. And there was 4 of us boys. I was the oldest. My brother next to me, he had a little bit of common sense. My 2 little brothers, they was, at that age, they didn't understand fear. And I can remember Dad couldn't watch all of us. He would tell me, watch your brothers. Because one of them may be going that way and Dad be after them, but then the other one might go that way and I had to watch them. I watched them. You know how I can prove it? They didn't drown. Do you know that's what we are to do as members of the Lord's church? We are to hold fast, but we also are to consider one another in order to stir up for love and to good works, to do what we need to do. We are to encourage one another. Now, we are to hold fast. We are to encourage one another. Then verse 25, some people pick 25 out of context. They just said, because here it says, we are to let us consider one another and all that in order to stir the good works. Not, part of the same sentence, same phrase, not forsaking the assembly of ourselves together as the manner of some is. Not to what? Forsake the assembly. Now some have read into this and said, we cannot forsake the communion. Wait a minute, does it say anything in here about communion? Well, we go, hey, if you come to church just because of the juice and the cracker, did you know you can do that at home? But the thing about it is, we come, it says, not forsaking the assembly of themselves together. Why? Because we come to consider one another in order to stir one another up into love and good works, not forsaking the assembly as the manner of some is, but, I know it's talking about because the but, exhorting one another. Exhorting, that's a strong word for encouragement. We are to encourage, exhort one another. And so much the more as you see the day approaching. Somebody said, well, what day is it? It don't matter what day it is. I don't care if it's Sunday, if it's Judgment Day, or if it's death. It doesn't matter. Just so much more we are to do it as we see the day approaching. It's what we do that's more important than the day, if that makes sense. Any day, we are preparing someone for that. And some people think the thought stops there, but I don't think it does. Some people just, okay, that's it. But it says, and so much the more, because it carries on the thought, because it says for. That's a continuation. For if we sin willfully after we have received the knowledge of the truth, there is no longer remains a sacrifice for sin, but a certain fearful expectation of judgment and fury indignation, which will devour the adversary. What is it saying? If we sin willfully, what's the willful sin? Somebody said, well, that's not forsaking the assembly. No, that's how we do the sin. How we don't keep from doing the sin. It's not talking about the assembly, it's talking about we are to draw near to God and encourage others. If you come to church and you don't encourage one another, if you just come in and take the fruit of the vine and the bread and get up and leave and say, well, you haven't done what this is talking about. You could have done that at home. What you can't do at home is to encourage and provoke one another to love and good works. And by the way, you have to give the other people the chance to do that to you. A lot of people don't realize that. You have to give other people that opportunity. If it says, and it goes on 28, anyone who has rejected Moses' law died without mercy and the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. Well, how much more punishment do you suppose will be to those worthy who trespass the Son of God underfoot, counting the blood of the covenant by which he was sanctified a common thing, and insulted the Spirit of grace? What is he talking about? Turning you back on what God told you to do. Somebody said, well, that's the communion. Well, that's more than the communion because he died. Who did he die for? He died for your brethren. And what do you think of your brethren? What do you think of the people that God died for? He gave his blood. And they used that blood. Our brethren used the blood. They used, and they are part of the covenant. They had been washed in the pure water. Their bodies have been washed. That's what it said. We read. They have. It says, for we know, and it goes on. Oh, how much worse punishment do you suppose will be of those worthy who have trampled the Son of God underfoot, counting the blood of the covenant by which he was sanctified a common thing, insulting the Spirit of grace. For, look at 30, for we know him who said, vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. And again, the Lord will judge his people. Verse 31, and the lesson is yours. It is a fearful thing to fall into the hands of the living God. It is a fearful thing to fall into his hands. But it's a gracious thing to accept his hand. Will you not accept the hand of Jesus? And every time you stretch forth your hand to encourage your brother, then you are accepting and showing and acting on the hand of God. We continue this next week. Think about this. We have a priest who died for us. Died for us. And we are his brethren. And we have a responsibility to God, to Christ, and to one another. God be with you till we meet again.